Hello. I'm wondering if folk can hear me out there, and it would be really great if somebody could send me a message to that effect. Yeah, if someone could just write a comment to let me know that the live video has started, then that would be very helpful. And I'm starting
Pour
with
ça,
grandfather.
je veux rester comme je suis, indien, le premier occupant du pays ici. Faut être connu par ça. C'est pas, je voudrais pas assimiler une autre nation. Comme le Canadien, je suis pas Canadien, je suis Nord-Américain. Même je suis pas Indien, parce que je viens pas des Indes. Alors, en Amérique, Nord-Amérique, oui, c'est moi, Nord-Américain. Language.
Once more, I'll just check our Facebook screen to see whether folk are visible or can hear me. And it's sometimes challenging to manage all this technology by myself. So please give me a moment to catch up with you. Where is it? Yeah, there we are. We are live. I don't see any comments informing me that you guys can see me, but I just hope you can. Okay, I see Ross there, and I'm very grateful, Ross. Thank you for that first confirmation. And there you go. I hope you've heard grandfather drumming us in, and I shall now continue with our PowerPoint presentation. So thank you for those of you who are able to join us this morning. I started with a smudge, and in the little video clip that came from the Ojigwanong documentary, the National Film Board documentary created by um, National Film Board and Lucy Wimet, you heard grandfather drumming us in to this special moment. And uh, Today, the 11th of November at 11 o'clock, we're acknowledging the life, the birth, the work, and the living legacy of Grandfather William Commanda. And I'm going to start off by sharing this slide honoring his family. Uh, I talked to Evelyn last night. She and Tommy are not both very well right now. And we jointly actually ask for your prayers for all of us as we continue to support the energy of Grandfather William Commander's work. Um, Tommy wasn't well, and I visited him in hospital just maybe a week or so ago. And uh, And that reminds me of one of our Circle of All Nations gatherings at the Public Service Commission, where Tommy did the opening prayer for our session and brought us all to tears, really, reminding us about how important Grandfather Commanda was to him, to his family, to the community, and to the larger Circle of All Nations world that really invaded their home over many, many years, because grandfather's spirit was really that of connecting a circle of all nations and building a vision of a culture of peace. And Evelyn tells me now that, gosh, Circle of All Nations has in fact invaded the hospital in Maniwaki, and she says they're getting like service from a diversity of new people and new faces at the hospital, and are finding the energies contributing to healing. Uh, and my visit to the hospital reminded me that it was Grandfather Commanda's grandfather, Louis Commanda, who was chief at Kiriganzibi many decades ago, and it was during his period that the community passed the land that the hospital sits on to the city of Maniwaki with the assumption that all indigenous peoples, the Algonquins of the Kirigan-Zibi Anishinaabeg, as well as the newcomers to the land, would receive services for health and healing at that place. And that hospital is situated on a very, very high mountain peak in that Maniwaki area. It's very, very special. And I hope in the future there'll be some way to acknowledge grandfather Louis Commanda. His ancestors occupied this area many, many, uh, centuries ago. And grandfather lives on Bedibi Lake, and we consider it um, full of the energy of grandfather Louis Commanda. Today is Veterans Day. It's Remembrance Day, and it's a very special moment for all the world. And I have here some images of grandfather's uncle, Gabriel Commanda, who was a veteran of the First World War. And that little document over there that you see along the side was one that I found on the 100th anniversary of Chief Louis Commander's death, affirming, his name, his heritage, his family. It was really weird that it presented at that particular moment when we really needed it also in part of our acknowledging of Gabriel Commanda. So Gabriel Commanda was the second brother of Grandfather Commanda's father, Alonzo. And Gabriel Commanda moved to other parts of the territory. And in Saint Sauvin, he actually met and fell in love with a French woman, married her, then found that there was a lot of resistance to the relationship. was also the time of the war, and he had to actually go to war to assume some acceptance by the family as um, person, part of the new uh, family, community, country that was evolving in North America. He did, and there are really interesting stories about him and his engagement uh, in the wars. He then returned, and it was the time of the first global pandemic. That was the Spanish flu. And he arrived to find that his wife and his two children had died just a week before his return. So Uncle Gabriel lived a very tragic life. He ended up moving to Valdor area. And that, as some of you will know, is the site of the last gold rush. Everybody moved into this place where he was the first to reveal the minerals, the gold in that area. Uh, he unfortunately was not able to share in any of the wealth of that area, really, and he returned to Kiriganzibi when Grandfather Commanda went and found him many decades later. Uh, very poor, very penniless. But his rich heritage of love and friendship is very much alive in Valdor. And the ice sculpture that you see over here is of Uncle Gabriel, created by one of our late friends, um, Dan uh, Gagne, who really worked very hard to have Uncle Gabriel acknowledged in Valdor as really the founding person of that area. Source Gabriel is the waters named after him that feed the four surrounding communities. He wanted to have a bridge created in his name. I don't think that successfully happened yet, but we know that the Commanda name is now associated with the bridge in the capital city. And so that energy of bridge building is very much part of that heritage there. Uncle Gabriel could write in French, Algonquin, and English. So he became the scribe for all the newcomers from all over the world who really actually were not literate. He would write letters for them. And so he became very much a symbol of what the Friendship Center, Sainte Amity de Valdor, later created. Um, One, a kindergarten that was named after him. And it was really special to me when we went to the launch there because all the children came to this indigenous center for their childcare services. And so they were under really the umbrella, the arms of the indigenous peoples, the young children growing up in Valdor. Then the Centre d'Amitié organized a friendship a walk. It's executed every March 31st and it honors Uncle Gabriel Commanda. And of course, the March 21st is the day, the Global United Nations Day for an elimination of xenophobia and racism. And so we're very proud and pleased that the Commander Energy is linked with that. There in the backdrop, you'll see all the photos that grandfather collected over the years of his family, members of his family at one of his birthdays, and uh, and with that, we want to acknowledge all the veterans. I myself actually worked with Veterans Affairs Canada and Alberta, and I always acknowledge a particular veteran I visited in Stettler, Alberta. And he was bedridden because of the tragedies of his war experiences. And when I was ready to leave, he'd start to recite something from Robert Service's poem. And he'd go, line after line, sentence after sentence. And then sometimes he'd lose the thread of his rhyme and he'd ask me to please stay. a little longer so that he could get into the rhythm of the poem, which took him away from the pain of his day to day life. And I'm sure that is a struggle for many other veterans and families who are dealing with post traumatic stress disorder. And as much as we're proud of their efforts, we also know that war is a very complex story, and we want to affirm, especially today when the whole world is so conscious of conflict and violence, that as Rachel Prudhomme mentioned earlier today, we're honoring today the work of a warrior for peace, and that's Grandfather William Commanda. And here you can see his writing at the bottom. He's put in his own caption. He was 6 months old when this photograph was taken. And he was born uh, on the 11th of November in 1913 on the eve of the First World War. And the morning star was shining so brightly when he arrived into the world that his mother named him Ojigwanong. And sometimes we'd be ready to celebrate his birthday at 8 in the morning, but he'd remind me, no, we have to wait till the moment when the train tooted its arrival into the town. The train was the way that the traditional landscape of the Algonquins and the indigenous peoples of North America was transformed. And its arrival in Maniwaki was matched by William Commander's. To many of us, we consider him a light in an ever darkening world, and um, and he carried that energy of building relationships into his life over the many years that followed. Here is an iconic picture of him. It's in a Chamber of Commerce publication from, I guess, 1935, where he is actually described as an Algonquin type. Some of you who have participated in our gatherings will recall Abuela Margarita, our Mexican grandmother, who joined us every year once she arrived at the first gathering. And she noted in particular the rock backdrop, that he was planted in his land. He was planted in the rocks. These are the most ancient rocks in the world that contributed the creation of Mother Earth. The most ancient rocks appeared here in this Quebec area, as well as in eastern Brazil. And so here we're sitting on very sacred lands. It's marked by the Canadian Shield. But this is really something that the Abuela Margarita, who always reminded us that we were cosmic beings, she noted that backdrop. Of course, others of us note how stylish and dapper our elder always was. And uh, we like that pose and picture of him very much too. This is from a little later stage in his life. Uh, he was a guide, a trapper. Grandfather actually started working. He worked all his life. Uh, I would say he started playing with canoes and tracking canoes when he was a toddler. His mother would create little birch bark canoes for him, and he would float them through the gutters of water created by the rainstorms. And that is how he learned about water and movement. And the idea of canoe and movement is very much a symbol of his life and work, and also all our research with respect to his efforts. So he learned then, and by the time he was 8, he was a newspaper boy. He was polishing shoes. He went on then to become a veneer log selector because of his very fine understanding of trees and bush and the bush life. And he described himself from time to time as a company man. where he was trying to teach people to select trees with care, to use them for specific purposes, much as he used trees for his canoe building. And he objected strongly to the endless clear cutting of all the natural resources in his homeland. And his homeland spanned Canada and the U.S., so he was very concerned in both places about tree cutting. Uh, in Quebec, he'd often say, you know, it feels like a needle piercing my eyes when I see this endless tree cutting, because people don't realize trees drink water, trees breathe, they're the lungs of Mother Earth, and they are so critically important for our lives. Um, uh, that message and heritage he continued to implant, and of course, uh, given that he wasn't able to convince everybody of all of this, he being the carrier of the sacred wampum heritage, and particularly the Seven Fire Prophecy heritage, um, he anticipated that the world would be seeing challenges in the area of nature, and he worked hard to enable us to become wiser in accepting our rightful places on the earth, together with all the other creations of Mother Earth. Some of this has not happened successfully, and of course, we are now in the age of what we now call climate change. We've moved from uh, discussing environmental crisis, but we talk about it as climate change, and the extinction, the sixth mass extinction of many species around the world. Uh, these are the things he tried to alert us through, and it came from some of that early exposure and experiential knowledge he acquired on the land. Um, he was a acclaimed chief in view of his leadership qualities, I guess. He was acclaimed chief of what was the River Desert First Nations, later Kirigan Zibi and Anishinaabe. He'd be off working. He always worked. And he'd say, his wife Mary would call him up and say, "Oh, they've put you in again. They've put you in again as chief." So he managed his responsibilities for almost 19 years, with serving his people, taking care of his family, and trying, I guess, to engage with and educate the larger world that he saw occupying his homeland. Along the way, he became Supreme Chief of the North American Indian Nations government. This was uh, really inspired by the efforts of his friend, late Huron leader Gilles Siwi. Just as another one of those little tidbits that happens in life, Gilles Siwi's birthday was the 3rd of August, and that was the date that William Commanda departed this world. They spent many years working to create this sense of indigenous identity, and this work started around the time of the United Nations. I say um, uh, Grandfather Commander and these chiefs, which also included actually Chief Pagagamo, another one of the World War One veterans, deeply honored in the Ontario area. He was one of the early chiefs of this group, and they affirmed the importance and the relevance of the place of indigenous peoples in North America. And I say that the civil rights movement that inspired the rest of the world from the time of Martin Luther King, the other activists like Mahatma Gandhi, like the president of my homeland, Nelson Mandela, Steve Biko's, the voices for this kind of civil rights uh, um, engagement began really with the indigenous in North America. Grandfather took that message many years later to a meeting with the first mm, Prime Minister Trudeau. This image is from 1968. Uh, um, Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau wanted uh, an indigenous welcome as he assumed responsibility as prime minister in the country. You know, he had been engaged in travels around the world, including in India. He had been thinking about how to reconcile some of the issues of Canada, the issues of reconciling the French and the English voices, coming to terms with the increasing multicultural population of Canada, and he recognized the need to acknowledge the First Peoples. And he insisted on sharing a plate of beans with the then chief commander, William Commanda. Uh, he had already actually heard about William Commanda, and this was because of William's particular position with respect to taxes. Apparently, Revenue Canada had sent him many documents expecting him to file his tax claims, and you know, William filed it in his garbage box. And so Pierre Trudeau was then the Minister of Justice, had already been acquainted with this chief's position, and they spent a lot of time talking about justice issues. And at one point, grandfather said, "Oh yes, and we spell it Justus." And no, 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 said Pierre Trudeau. It's Justice in French and in English. Well, many lawyers and legal people have used that just us message over the decades, but it was William Commanda who coined it. He felt really that Pierre Trudeau was now initiating a moment of bridging with the First Peoples, but unfortunately that didn't evolve as it perhaps could have at that time period. But we're grateful that many, many years later, Indigenous peoples are now acknowledged in Canada and are increasingly taking their rightful place in the lands of their ancestors. Now, there in the other photograph, you see grandfather holding the three-figure wampum belt. And this with the representatives of the Queen, the former Governor General Adrian Clarkson and His Excellency um, Salston. And their grandfather talked about the Indian in the center, holding the hands of the newcomers, in those days, the French and the English, drawing their hands together in friendship uh, because they were quite aware of the wars of Europe. And with the symbol of the cross, acknowledging a spirit of sharing, a sharing of values as well as the natural resources of the land. And of course, grandfather, because his ancestors had created this agreement, continued throughout his life to affirm this notion of friendship, even though he was aware that the values of the indigenous peoples were not necessarily integrated as they ought to have been, and hence his continual work to draw to our attention the plight of Mother Earth. And he did this then in the course of his work with the Circle of All Nations, as well as his outreach to many people. Before the, okay, so in 1967, he hosted the first gathering, drawing together people from all races and all walks of life, but also from the United States and Canada, and hosted this gathering in Eganville, a site where there are many reflections of the ancient petroglyphs and pictographs of his people, depicting their energy on the land over the centuries. He hosted the next significant gathering of indigenous peoples in 1969 in Maniwaki, and we have somewhere in our files a picture, photograph of the huge circle formed around his land, generating then the spirit of unity, the spirit of his work. You see the image on his turtle. It's the logo for the Circle of All Nations that he and I created with artist Claude Latour. The tree in the center was a spruce tree with four separate trunks, and Grandfather Commanda photographed that. Actually, Lucy we met, who created the National Film Board documentary Ojigwanong, Encounter with an Algonquin Sage, she was with us when he took that photograph. Claude placed it on a live turtle, so that's not just an image of a turtle. And you'll know that turtle is the symbol, the name for the continent of North America. And you will perhaps have noted in some of our other documentaries how we explain why Turtle Island was called that by grandfather and others. The two particular mountains uh, um, symbolize the connection with Lake of Two Mountains area, one of the important meeting places of his ancestors. There's the morning star in the backdrop. There are trees reminding us of our boreal forest heritage. There's waters reminding us really about the critical importance of the waters, and in particular the Ottawa River. We say really, though the St. Lawrence is like massive and huge, taking its birth in Lake Superior and traveling through all the Great Lakes to pass by into the Gulf of the St. Lawrence, the Ottawa is really actually a very critically important one, in part because it was one of the wildest rivers of North America. It had so many rapids before it became dammed at so many places, but the rapids generated oxygen and created so much of the health of the landscape. It also created the wealth of Canada in the early years with the logging, and Canada really um, owes a lot, the whole country, to the provisions of the Ottawa River. There are seven routes in our image, and they link us with the seven fire prophecy, which I just mentioned briefly before. The seven fires prophecy was an ancient prophecy um, depicted in a sacred wampum belt that grandfather's great grandfather, Pakanawatik, originally carried. And um, when he became the carrier of this wampum belt and two others, he realized the urgency with which the world needed to come to terms with friendship with each other, and more importantly, respecting the resources of Mother Earth. And he brought this message forward in all his activities, but in a very public way in Canada in 1987 at the first Conference of Indigenous Peoples, where he informed the leadership of the federal and provincial governments really that everywhere he looked there was pollution, and that this needed to be remedied before the end of time. Of course, he didn't wait for the political leadership to do this. He affirmed the cause of Mother Earth with every breath, and his Circle of All Nations comprises many people who have taken that work forward in their own relationships with the earth. He took that message forward to the uh, pre-Rio summit deliberations in France, and that's the pre-Earth conference. And to this day, we have the Conference of Partners. I think we're approaching a COP 28. Um, Still looking for ways of balancing exploitation of the resources of Mother Earth, while at the same time recognizing uh, uh, the Earth is under severe change in view really of the decade of Anthropocene and the impact of humans on the planet. Uh, but the Seven Fires prophecy inspired his passionate work really till the day he died at almost age 98. And Seven Fires prophecy. And what is a prophecy? One time we met South African shaman Credo Mutwa himself, a writer, a Sansui, a holy man, who who said in very simple terms, "What is a prophecy? It's an early warning signal." And for those who could see the signals, they knew the urgency of what was coming, and therein actually has been positioned the voice of indigenous peoples all over the world. They've always maintained that deep, deep connection with the Mother Earth, recognizing that we all come from that one mother. And grandfather's been one of the vocal, visible people who's shared that message of respect for Mother Earth uh, across the world. I say that priority was the greater one for him. And I say for people like me, I'm Indian. And as you know, he said in that drum song, he's not Indian. I think he liked to take me around to a lot of his meetings because I was the visible statement that he was not the Indian, I was. But I was actually born in South Africa, so I'm really sort of African. And when I came to Canada, I worked here first as a public servant. And I thought that was really exciting. Here I was serving this new country that I was located in, um, an immigrant serving this country. And being a parole officer meant I was doing my very best to keep this country and all its people safe. But then I ended up working in Indigenous justice, and it became even a greater both honor and wake up for me because uh, I began to understand the colonial history of my homeland, South Africa, a lot better when I began to see through the eyes of the many people in the prison worlds that I lived and worked in, and then through grandfather Commander's eyes. I just actually visited his daughter Evelyn a couple of days ago, and she showed me some of the books. She passed on to me some of the books that in his library because we're now going to be commencing to write a more serious document about the history and work and thinking of Grandfather Commanda. And you can see that he tracked the history of his peoples and the world over a long time. And all these threads and themes are interwoven in his work with the Circle of All Nations. That work was also building friendship, and the big gatherings recommenced in 1966. Well, I should say the earlier gatherings after 1969 continued till there was a huge flood in 1974, and the log cabin that he and his friends had built at Biddiby Lake went floating down the Gatineau River. That, of course, makes me remember grandfather father Alonzo, and the way indigenous peoples knew the land. They knew the messages of the cosmic, they knew the messages of the earth. And Grandpa Alonzo said to William Commanda and Tommy and Evelyn, next summer you're going to be canoeing at the lake on the land because there's going to be a flood. He actually died before this flood presented itself. But as soon as it arrived, both both William and his family, but also William's niece Daisy, uh, reflected on that memory of Grandpa Alonso's warning. Um, Anyway, the gatherings resumed in a big way in the mid 90s. This was precipitated in part by the Sunbow 5 walk that Grandfather Commanda and many people engaged in, a walk for Mother Earth and for greater awareness and understanding of Native people. It commenced at First Encounter Beach in Massachusetts and went all the way to Santa Barbara, California, over a 7.5 month period. And that is documented by one of our Circle of All Nations colleagues, Stephen McFadden, and you've seen us mention that in many of our presentations in the past. And actually, Evelyn passed me a book also written by Stephen McFadden, like decades ago, including a story about his meeting with Grandfather Commanda. Um, I'll just say, as an aside, we're going to be talking with him about his latest work in agroecology and how he seeds and sees threads of the inspiration from William Commanda reflected in this work. Um, then on to more recent history. Okay, so when I met Grandfather Commanda, I was working in the criminal justice system. I was working in Indigenous justice, Aboriginal justice, we used to call it then. And then when I realized how important his work was, he was 84 years old at the time. At that time, he expected that really he would probably die in a couple of years. He didn't, of course. He continued to work hard, and I knew him pretty well every day of the last 15 years of his life. When he was in Maniwaki, I was there helping and supporting him. When he had work to do in Ottawa or elsewhere across North America or elsewhere in other parts of the world, we traveled together. Evelyn, who calls me her sister, um, acknowledges that she was very grateful that I became a part of her father's life and was able to travel with him and support him and help him because she herself had many other responsibilities with her family and community, and she knew her father's work was big, and so I'm always very grateful. Uh, uh, in fact, yesterday when we talked about that, grateful that we have maintained our relationship despite the many challenges that all of us have struggled through over the years. Now then, grandfather, well, you guys probably know that I wrote a book. Oh, there it is, a book about him that I called "Learning from a Kindergarten Dropout," and he actually ended up receiving two honorary degrees. Uh, this one at the time of his own convocation from the University of Ottawa, another from the Université de Québec Outaouais, which was presented posthumously after his death, but he already knew that that honor was coming his way. And I'll just add, he was also appointed Officer of the Order of Canada. And I do believe probably the first, I have to check that out, but the first Indigenous person was appointed Officer of the Order of Canada. And that, of course, is the more senior level in the honors, the penultimate honors that Canada pays people who, they say, desire a better country. And I say Grandfather Commanda desired a better word and most worthy of that honor. I, to my shame, really never went to any of my earlier graduations, even though both my parents were teachers. Graduation was very important to them, and especially to my father. But for whatever childish reason, I didn't really acknowledge those moments. However, on this occasion, which was actually the 10th of November, 2018, yesterday, I did go to my graduation at the insistence of grandfather's niece, Lillian, gosh, Lillian Dowling. So Lillian was insisting that I go, not just as an affirmation of my thesis on her uncle, but really much more. She wanted me to take a place in that world. Down below, you'll see an image of Grandfather Commanda presenting the kindergarten dropout book to who became my thesis supervisor, my postdoctoral supervisor, Professor Fraser Taylor. Um, and even as he ages, much like grandfather, he doesn't stop working. With him, we're engaged right now in a children's mapping project where we're looking for ways to affirm the voice and aspirations of children as they help us remap stories and history and a path forward in a world of challenge. Professor Taylor just recently was appointed Officer of the Order of Canada as well. Um, Many years ago, we had the amazing um, digital documentary creators, uh, MoMA. What is it? Uh, I've got their little video here. MoMA Factor, a French Canadian group that creates these amazing images out of light and tell stories through that. They came and interviewed grandfather here in Canada. And he was, of course, determined to tell his own stories. And they were just wanting a little statement from him that could work with the story they were wanting to tell about the history of Canada. And, um, and eventually they did get one. Moment Factory, I think that's what it's called. And we went to the launch at Parliament Hill many years later. And there, everything was totally dark except for the amazing lights. And I managed to capture this picture of grandfather on the Peace Tower. And I bring it up today because really uh, that is the message of peace that he wanted to convey to all the world. And I'm glad he's uh, can be still seen, at least in my photograph, uh, embedding that prayer at that Peace Tower. My friend was talking about veterans. She's very much committed to the veterans, my friend Moira. And I was telling her that Grandfather Commanda, together with Elder Dominic Rankin, I think, was there. Maybe Elder Peter DeConte, I don't think so. But anyway, they did the first prayer for veterans at Parliament. I think it might have been in 2008. And all the veterans lined up to be smudged and blessed by Grandfather Commanda, and that included, yeah, Romeo Dallaire. And of course, that reminds us of how important it is for us to take new attitudes to relationships between countries and peoples in this time of challenge. We went to South Africa in 2001. And it was because South Africa was hosting the second United Nations conference um, on um, racism and xenophobia, and and grandfather was not really supported by the government of Canada in making this move to South Africa. It was his passion for peace that brought him there. And then we were delayed there because of 9/11 and the crisis that erupted and moved really the entire world into a new phase of relationships. Um, it was in some ways an interesting moment because it was through that extra time period in South Africa that we managed to meet Credo Mutwa, the Zulu shaman. Um, when grandfather Commanda tried to talk to him about the 7/5 prophecy, he said, "You don't have to tell us that. We've got this prophecy amongst our peoples as well." And he too was anticipating changes, times of change. When we returned, I think it was Maria Cook from The Citizen who interviewed grandfather, and his words were "make peace, not war," and this at the time of 9/11. Um, it was kind of like fearful a little bit when we were in South Africa because, particularly for an indigenous person, he wanted to finish his life on his own land. He didn't want to be trapped in South Africa. But he came back and still affirmed a message of peace. This plaque was put together by our friend Ray Sundstrom from the Wolf Project. And the Wolf Project was one grandfather supported over many years to promote harmony, to take the emphasis away from racism, but really to honor people who are promoting better relationships with each other. Um, Then I bring you to some birthday moments. And here are a few of the many birthday celebrations that were hosted over the years. Celebrations because everybody really engaged in the celebration. It wasn't just grandfather's birthday moment, it was everybody's. And I think it was Elena who created that cake for us, the Circle of All Nations cake along the way. Uh, One presented here at the Cumic Lodge and presented by the Inuit community. I believe it was Jerry Lanouette who brought that big round cake for one of our events at the Friendship Center. And this party at my place, Betsy Stang, Lillian, Lee Pennington, lots of friends from the United States joined us. And I remember having to go and get an ice cream cake from Baskin and Robbins because grandfather Commanda wanted walnut ice cream. Here's an image of him at one of his birthday parties in the lodge in Maniwaki, presented with a bouquet that we're now sharing with all of you. Finally, um, over the last few years, um, with the help of several students, and in particular Jonathan, we've created the new Circle of All Nations website. And uh, it's a very special website because the landing page takes you to our three other websites where you have still relevant but historical information about the work of Grandfather Commanda. It takes you to our Still in the Works Atlas. It takes you to all our Facebook pages. And it takes you right in the center to this new website. It's a very complex website where we're trying to jam in as much as we can about grandfather's work and friends and people. It includes many, many photos and images. The Chinese student who helped me create the landing page pointed out that she can't often read the long English texts that I write. But she returns even now to the website to look at the images. And it's through this that has become acquainted with the indigenous peoples, grandfather's ideas, and the diversity of Canada. And she shared that with her parents in China. So we know his message are reaching people in different ways, and we invite you to also join us at that in that space. Um, So I say for memories, go to our new landing page and website. Note this one to understand our work, the Circle of All Nations page, the module, and hot off the press, our report on our work over the past few years, with many links to keep you busy if you're interested in learning more about Grandfather Commanda, what we've been doing over the past, 3 years. We've been hectic, we've been busy, and we've taken Grandfather's message to diverse groups and organizations. What we've tried to do is really show an integration of the voice and spirit of indigenous, such as he and his friends expressed it, um, the voice of the grassroots people who made the Circle of All Nations come live, the academic world that grandfather wanted to also reach, and we wanted them to understand him and his thinking through his eyes. We've written maybe, I don't know, post the thesis, perhaps 10 to 12 academic papers that show the seeds of our thinking. And the most recent one was actually launched at an Indigenous Water Summit hosted by Space for Innovations by Diana Mastriachi Sanchez and colleagues. And it included also the launch of a book called Indigenizing Knowledge for Climate Action. And uh, we wrote a paper then of grandfather's ongoing discourse and its impact, and it includes the voice of several of our Circle of All Nations colleagues. And I'm hoping over the next few weeks to be discussing the book and their ongoing work with water in Bolivia. That's Julia Blaney. With the March for the Forests, that's Patrick Gravel and other folk. With the agroecology that Stephen McFadden continues to present, with Sunbow's work and recent book, and reflections on grandfather. Sambo, Jean Letellier, actually created the uh, second reference in my thesis. We included the videos and documentaries that he'd captured of grassroots people who animated the voice of grandfather over the years, and included that as part of my academic record because I know they contributed to both the work of Circle of All Nations, to my thinking, and to Grandfather Commander's work, and contributed to him receiving those honorary doctorate degrees. We didn't want him to be just a pretty face, but of course, we all love that beautiful face. So, miigwech with that. Um, I'm going to turn off that PowerPoint. I hope folk have been able to hear me, and I am now going to just um, play this for a few minutes. It's one of my earlier uh, slideshows of some of the colleagues who've been part of the Grandfather Commander work over the years. And it's obviously not working as it ought to. Technology not presenting as well as it should. So never mind about the music. Here is Grandfather with Donald Marshall Jr., of course, our friend who's fought for Indigenous rights, voice of youth, for justice in the prisons, and a big part of the ongoing Circle of All Nations vision and work. Um, the creation of the lodge, the teaching lodge, here with South Africans, here with Gaston, You know how that lodge was created? Grandfather, a little bit of money, and in went the wood. He had a little bit more money, and then the windows went in. And gradually it became a teaching lodge over the years. These some of the images in South Africa at the UN conference. Here he is with the late Chief Billy Two Rivers, who joined in a pipe ceremony. Here also with Matthew Kunkam, the monkeys that grandfather wanted to see and that Evelyn intends to go to South Africa to see. Doing work here with the Mtapo Peace Education Center and all the um, workers engaged in peace education in South Africa. Here with the Danes at a Steve Biko event and with Mrs. Biko in South Africa. Yep, on the beach in South Africa uh, with my sister Beulah, with uh, oh gosh, some of our other colleagues who visited us here, former MP Rick Laliberti, here with some of members of our Wolf team of the past, uh, here with Gaston and Shomer's Dominic Rankin. I think this was the moment actually when we took the pipe that that Shomus mentioned during his recent gathering in Mont Tremblant in Lac Saint Lucie, where he drew together indigenous peoples from the Americas for a particularly special gathering. And I'll acknowledge also our firekeeper, um, Pete DeConte, who didn't often like photographs taken, but Pete DeConte kept the fire going through that gathering and through so many of our Circle of All Nations events, both in Maniwaki and elsewhere. Uh, the famous Trudeau jacket created by William's wife Mary, their presence in the Canoe Museum with its founder Kirk Whipper, here with the Métis representatives and Tony Belcourt there, here with the birch bark that resulted in the creation of the canoe with Todd Labrador and Valerie Poyen. William, in his robe from Africa, as always, reading with his binoculars at the stage, well, his whatever you call those things. There with Lucy in the center, creator of the Jugovan documentary, Roy Barnes, Claudette, launch of the Indigenous Justice Legal Clinic, I think, with Pierre Papati in Laximore, with Douglas Cardinal, and with Laximore Youth the many years ago when we were working hard for the creation of the Victoria Island Yasanabka Indigenous Peace Building Center. Here with the chief, who's no longer with us, very young guy, but he was a chief from Alberta, someone I knew as a part of my Aboriginal Justice Learning Network. Here with Evan Pritchard, writer, uh, young people, with Tommy, with former policeman from Kingston area, Bowers, Brian Bowers, with Shirley Tolley, with Fran, our communications person, with the former um, Governor General of Ontario. That was when grandfather was presented with the uh, an award at the University of Ottawa, with sadly the late Daisy and Willow at some Christmas event. This picture at the Bahamas, where really at the Shivananda Retreat Center, we made a presentation, but it was only after grandfather and I had to talk about forgiveness that the video would play. Claude Latour helped us with our image for the logo. Um, Baby, Lee and his late wife Joy, Evelyn, grandfather, gosh, South Africans, yeah, Donald Marshall and David Suzuki, Jules Siwi, uh, no, Jules Siwi's nephew, uh, with us over there. Charlie Commanda, Betsy, Evelyn, and Christine. Christine just turned 60 a few days ago, the 7th of October. Happy birthday, Christine. That's Evelyn's oldest daughter. um, Leonardo, Luz. Luz, we met her really when she was singing for the Ottawa River at the first Ottawa River Heritage Moment. Minnie Matouche from the Cree School Board. Gosh, you see other AFN leadership at one of our gatherings, the posters created by Karen and myself, and we marked um, a prayer for 9/11 since we hosted a birthday party for Grandfather Commanda on the 9th of November, though his birthday was actually the 11th. Late Louise Papadi, there's Larry McDermott and his mother, there's our South African gang, there's our fiddle player, there's our powwow dancer, there's Pete DeConti and his family, there's Sister Mary and her daughter, um, no, pardon me, Sister Mary with William Commanda, and his older sister Judy with Daisy, a feminist of note, with my friends Stephen and Marion, uh, um, who uh, hosted grandfather and I over many, many birthdays and Easters and Christmas dinners with the wife of Douglas Cardinal and his two little children, with Jerry Lanouette, with our friends from BC. Oh my goodness, what memories! This guy came here to tell William Commander all about himself. He came from New Brunswick, and it worked out to be somebody that William and Evelyn knew when she was a child on the Salmon River. And after he told grandfather a huge big story about himself, he said, "Oh my God, I've come here to find myself," and yeah. So one day I'll look forward to sharing these with you guys. Elder Lillian Perawanakwat, big part of a lot of the wake up work at Victoria Island. Um, Robert Davidson, and yes, my friend Frida insisted I wear a Haida outfit. I'd known her before grandfather in the context of my justice work. And that's when we went and joined the Haida people when they came to reclaim um, their ancestors. Bob Poirier, the creation of documentaries at grandfather's place, canoe, um, uh, gosh, uh, Roberta Jameson, Michael Finkelstein, gathering supporters. Oh my goodness. And Nauko. Nauko's son just had a birthday recently, 2 days ago. Nauko is part of the work and the spirit of the Sambo 5 to grandfather's team to Japan. Wayne, security guard. Oh, and actually, here's our drummer. He brought the spirit of drumming to our gatherings from Laximont many years ago. I had to go and find him because grandfather wanted to have drum song and social evenings, the gathering, and that's what brought the music to our lives. The home of his great uncle, Uncle Big John. It was Big John Commanda, Big John Kaye, Douglas Cardinal. Birthday. Oh, here with late Bert Hellinger, the creator of the systemic constellation work that our friend Karl-Heinz Rauscher continues. Uh, Here with William's old friend John Garin. My goodness, he's the one who brought him um, his big Franklin stove in the basement of his home. And John also created a trough for William's canoe making so that he could heat the birch bark and uh, the gunnels and shape them. With my Uncle Cyril, oh, and with Stephen McFadden, who helped grandfather find his cowboy hat in Santa Fe, uh, with my friend Clayton Sandy, who continues to do amazing work in Winnipeg, still linked with us. And he is actually the person who did the first men's wellness gathering. And grandfather and I went and joined him with the wampum belts in Winnipeg many, many years ago. With my friend who just recently resurfaced, Natalie Jelena, Queen Margarita of Denmark, with Elijah Harper, with Nelson Mandela, with the Spirit for the Prayer for the Boreal Forest, the Sunbow 5 Walk, with Ernie Benedict, with uh, John Tedesco, artist, with the former Prime Minister uh, Paul Martin, interviewed by one of CTV's people, with David Barry and his family and his mother, with a friend who brought us the Viking, what do you call it, a calendar stick, with my aunt, with Mrs. Eleanor Seawee, Dr. Eleanor Seawee, and her son, uh, when grandfather received his award, his doctorate degree. Gosh, the pictures go on and on and on, and I'm just going to say, those of you who are interested will obviously connect with me, and we'll discuss this where you might be in these pictures someday. But I'll finish off with this one. It was a piece image of grandfather that was presented in an art gallery in Montreal. And there he is. Somebody had painted this picture of him as a peace activist, and there were many others there. Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, and countless others around the room. But I particularly like this one because this activist over here is um, um, Walden. What do you call him? Gosh, should I know? Um, he wrote Walden Pond, and now I'm gonna, even though I'm an English major, I'm gonna miss his name. But anyway, he wrote about learning about the connection with Earth through his Penobscot guide. And I say the thread of Indian William Commander's ancestors has inspired the writer. What is his name? Thoreau, Henry David Thoreau. Uh, Gosh, it goes on. Abuela Margarita. Okay. And I shall. Oh, and here you'll see evidence that William Commanda studied all the books in his library. Former chief here. Former Governor General when he received the Order of Canada. Ah, Noah, canoe maker. Okay, let me stop. I did say that this would be an hour-long session, and I just don't know whether there are any comments or questions or things like that, because actually it's really challenging to manage Facebook. In the future, I'm going to be doing uh, Zoom sessions and then presenting them on Facebook Live. But this recording will be saved, and you'll be able to find it um, on our Facebook library of videos, but also on our Circle of All Nations YouTube channel. So I'll just do one more check on another Facebook link to see if I see anything more over there in terms of comments. No, I do know a few people were going to be here with us, and that includes Patrice. I wish I could play your peace song, Patrice, but in the absence of that, maybe you'll share it on our page later. So, miigwech, people, miigwech to all of you who have been a part of the grandfather William Commanda work and who continue to keep that work alive. I hope this has worked reasonably. Ross, there are some comments, but I don't know really where. And so you'll forgive me my incompetence. All the best for the day in the upcoming year, and a prayer for peace for all. Miigwech.